you could be in the middle of like sub-Saharan Africa and connect with somebody in Tacoma.
I don't like this word too much, but there's a bit of a privilege there, right? Like, how many of these crowdsourcing things do you see come out of like sub-Saharan Africa, right?
Like, we're gonna build this amazing thing, this thing that's never been done, or whatever. All you got to do is contribute a little bit, and people do.
Take something polar like universal health care.
Yeah.
There's people who live relatively healthy lives and never go to the doctor, and they think, oh, there's no reason I need to be paying into healthcare. But if there's 50% of the population that thinks that way, the other 50% is going to suffer because there's not going to be enough money through crowdsourcing to give them what they need to survive.
That doesn't mean that we should inject compulsory engagement
Doesn't
to
it?
solve that.
Isn't it for the betterment of all mankind to subscribe to Kitchen Sink My
Cross? The future of all mankind. I will subscribe.
Welcome to another Kitchen Sink Microscopy. I'm Casey Rochford. Please like, and share, and subscribe. All right, that's enough of that.
I'm not gonna like try to edit that into a what's his name?
Max Headroom.
Max Headroom. Yeah, not gonna do that. So I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and don't forget, we write our own music, which is available on iTunes and Spotify and such places. So stick around to the end of the show, and you'll hear a new song. Or you could check out ksmvidcast.com, or you want to support the channel, go to patreon.com/ksmvidcast. Yeah. We might be a little drinky crow right now. So yeah, this is going to be a really interesting episode, but we're going to try to keep it short today, old school style.
Old school.
So yeah. Okay, Casey, what do you want to talk about today?
I was just thinking, like, do you think crowdsourcing could be like a viable way of financing basically anything, or do you think it has limitations to it? Because I feel like we hear about the success stories and people get the idea in their head, much like many things, right? That, oh, it's possible for whatever,
Well, no, that's a good point. That people, you're right. I think we only do hear about the success stories. So there's kind of this perception that all you have to do is crowdsource whatever you want to do. And we never hear about the failures. But there are many, many failures. Like business. Most businesses fail. Like the only experience we have with businesses are the ones that didn't fail, and such as crowdsourcing. Now, I think it's a revelation, or something that could never be done in the past. I think it has its place. Definitely can do things in ways that can never be done before. Is it something you do because you can't pay the utility bill? Probably not. Maybe, but probably not. Like just like
Yeah.
just like uh the lottery, like you can't depend on that to account for your day-to-day expenses.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a few different styles. I don't know if style is the right word, but like, like you can crowdfund for a disease or you can crowdfund for an innovative idea, and depending on what your crowd sourcing, revenue for, I think it really depends a lot on. So let's say it's an innovative thing, right? Like just like any other business, you've got to have a really good idea,
Yeah.
and you've
And
got
you
to
have to
have,
sell it like
yeah, and you've
to
got to have the
whoever's
marketing to the
financing.
proper audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like that, I don't see any real difference between that and just like peddling it the regular way, and I feel like those success stories are basically just, I mean, it's like you do all the same lifting, right? The same heavy
Well,
lifting.
what would be peddling the regular way, though?
I mean, going to like a singular investor and saying, here's my idea. Instead, you're going to a bunch of investors that throw in a little bit of money here and there and saying, here's my idea. But, you don't necessarily have to put it in as pretty a package or wiggle your way into getting their attention. Like maybe you've got a wide array of an audience and you say, well, if I just get the attention of my wide array with a little bit here and there, I can source enough funding to do my thing, right?
Yeah.
So, so I don't see a huge difference there. But when it comes to a disease, for instance, having been in biotech, there's a thing called uh, orphan disease uh, funding, right? And there's like a little bit of money available for things that don't affect a whole lot of people because there's not going to be much profit in that, right? So you're not going to likely get big investors.
Mhm.
Now, there's only so much funding for orphan diseases as well. So if you have a super rare disease, you might need to rely on people that care about you as an individual living, and
Sure.
things like that I think make actual sense.
Well, the thing is, like, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, things like that are vastly different than having to beg to an investor in person, one singular person that everything depends on. In this case, your scope is global, and all you're asking for might be like $10 from somebody or $1 or something like that. And so, I mean, six of one, half a dozen of another. I don't know at the end of the day if it's going to be the same thing, but it seems to me that it would be preferable to appeal to the global community, uh,
Well,
and
I guess the main
get a
difference
little
though
bit.
is what do those people get out of it though? Like a singular company investor, for instance, expects to get profits on the back end. But with crowdsourcing, that's not really, as far as I know, that's not built into the deal, right? Like,
Well, it depends on what it is. Sometimes, as an early adopter, you get some perks, um, but maybe not. Maybe
mhm,
all you get is good feeling. Like
yeah. I mean, with the
I have
diseases, that's
donated.
certainly the case.
Yeah, I've donated to some of those causes because it just like pulled at my heartstrings. Like I was like, oh fuck, this is so tragic. Like
Mhm.
I want to help this person or these people or something. Um, and it's very easy for me to put a few dollars towards something. But when everything hinges on one person or one company, well, that the gravity is weighted very heavily. It's a very an uphill climb, I guess, in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, I I did kind of a crowdsourcing thing when I had cancer, like, and this was like during the advent of social media, like it was just MySpace at that point, right? Um, I don't even know if I even said anything about it on MySpace. I can't remember. Like, I honestly don't even remember how MySpace worked. Uh, but like I raised a fair amount of money to help, pay my rent and my medical bills for a little while. And that's because I happen to have enough people that cared about me. I had a local restaurant that was willing to host the event, and put little placards on the table to get people interested in, boots on the ground, old school stuff like that, and that can work from time to time. But that's because I lived in Tacoma, which is a fairly big city. If you do that in, like a town with a population of like 500 people, you might just die, like,
Well, sure, back in the past. The thing is, we do exist in a global sense nowadays. With things like Starlink and whatever, it's ever more connected. Um, and you could be in the middle of like sub-Saharan Africa and connect with somebody in Tacoma, and you could never do that before. So is it perfect? Probably not. But is it?
There's an interesting point you've just peaked in my brain there. Like, there's a bit of I don't like this word too much, but there's a bit of a privilege there, right? Like, how many of these crowdsourcing things do you see come out of like sub-Saharan Africa, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's access to connectivity that gives us that ability. So
Well, yeah,
who's it really benefiting?
and that really is something that deserves a much bigger discussion.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you have the tools, you should use them, whatever they are.
Yes.
Like comparison, yeah. I mean, it would be nice if everybody was connected. Well, maybe it wouldn't be, but I mean, there's definitely benefits to being connected to everybody on the planet, to be able to appeal your case to everyone on Earth. Um, but we can't do that yet. Um, the crowdsourcing and crowdfunding, like, I think it's good because you have to state your case in a way that compels people to want to fund what you want to do. And I would argue we should probably do that with governments and wars and things like that. Hey, if this war is really worth fighting, hey, crowdfund it. Drop a couple bucks down here.
I was just going to bring that up because that's a huge component in kind of like a philosophical sense, right? Like, what if in lieu of taxes we just had crowdsourcing appeals or whatever? Like,
Oh
could
man,
that really work? Because you've you it's easy to think about war, the big global scale stuff, but you get down to like infrastructure, filling in potholes, whatever, all the minutia.
yeah,
I
you
don't
get
know that
down
it
to
would.
brass tacks, and it's like I I I I think people, if it's actually that important, people will fund it. Because taxes are arbitrary. It's like you collect taxes through force, and then it gets distributed, and then governments do what they will with those tax dollars or whatever, your money. um if something's unpopular, it won't get funded,
Well, okay,
and maybe
but
that's a good thing. Like, okay,
well,
because if we're being invaded by somebody, I think it'll be a popular thing. People are
yeah,
going to
that's an
throw some
easy
money
one.
in
But
there.
take something polar like universal health care.
Yeah.
There's people who live relatively healthy lives and never go to the doctor, and they think, oh, there's no reason I need to be paying into healthcare. But if there's 50% of the population that thinks that way, the other 50% is going to suffer because there's not going to be enough money through crowdsourcing to give them what they need to survive.
Well, no, maybe there will, if because I don't know that like 100% of the population is going to need to draw on that. So the ones that do are the ones who should put out their crowdsourcing videos, right? Like, hey, I've got this problem, I need help me. um I,
But that's all about networking. Like like take this show for example. It's super awesome. Not that many people know about it because we don't have a wide network yet. And that, I mean, like basically have solved all the problems of the universe, and people don't know it yet because we don't have the network for it, right? And that's
true, but
important,
that doesn't mean that we should inject compulsory engagement to
doesn't it?
solve that.
Isn't it for the betterment of all mankind to
For
subscribe
the
to kitchen sink
sake of the
microscopy?
future of all mankind, I will subscribe. Yeah.
I mean that's it's tongue in cheek, but it's a valid point, right? Like if you demonstrably have a way to cure cancer and you live in a town with 20 people and there's no broadband internet and you've met like maybe 30 people in your entire life, no one will ever find out about it. No one will fund it anywhere near the point it needs to get to actually take off and get off the ground and save the world.
Well, but how do you solve that? Like, what's the answer? If that is indeed the case, how do you solve that particular quandary?
Oof. Ooh. I don't want this to become a long episode, but oof,
No,
that's a big
it's
question.
more of like an open-ended question. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have the perfect answer, but yeah, I better open another beer because
well, I mean, it's something I think that is probably a conversation that should be uh, ever evolving. It's something that people should question and think about and be engaged in on a regular basis. Like the idea that, oh, you're just going to have some governmental system and, oh yeah, life is good, right? Like we've solved everything. Well, no, you haven't. um
so what about the idea of like things that everybody definitely uses and relies upon, things like infrastructure, like roads, like, you know, you depend on a good, reliable road to be in place for you to get from place to place, to do your job, to make your money, to get your food, whatever.
oh,
Things like that could
speaking of
just be
food,
taxed, right?
what about food? What about toilet paper? The everything that you need to survive, electricity, heating,
Mm-hmm.
like, I mean, where do you draw the line? uh, I
Well, I would argue that you need health. to consider, to
Well,
continue
but
living.
why is that the only thing that should fit into that box? Why not all the other stuff? Which honestly, like, you could go without going to the doctor for quite a long time, but you can't go without breathing oxygen for more than a few minutes.
Well, so far nobody's charging for oxygen, but
well, but even if they did, I food, um, other such things. I mean, I don't know that like charging for a thing puts it in a different category. I think there's finite. Okay, so here's the thing: on planet Earth, there's finite resources, and the way that humans have figured out to manage those is to trade them, to make exchanges. Um, and I think that's a pretty reasonable way to do it. Um, maybe I don't know. Maybe
I can certainly see the argument that, like, okay, food and health, there's no argument, you need those to survive. But in order to obtain those things, if you go to a grocery store to get them, somebody put labor in to get them there, to package them, to preserve them, all that, all the behind the scenes stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that has to be accounted for. Sure.
Yeah, there's a cost of production in some way.
Yeah. And the same goes for health. Like, somebody has to go through the trouble of learning all those things to become an expert in it, to provide that service, to provide the tools and the chemicals that are needed to prolong life and, cure disease and, put band-aids on people and things like that. Yes. But there's like, I don't know, like, it's hard to draw the line, but when it comes to things like that, like things that you absolutely need in order to survive, like shelter, food, health, water, like, it feels dirty to profit from that. Like, compensation is one thing. I get that. That's fair. But to make, like, and I'll say exorbitant profit, right? Because, like,
Yes.
it's
Okay.
fine.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's
I
fine
get
to
where
make
you're
some
coming from.
profit. Yeah.
No, because profit yields improvements.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you only broke even at every transaction,
Yeah,
nothing would ever get better. You'd never have more resources to do something more.
yeah,
And so it's only fair that especially when you put your dick on the slab to do something, take a huge risk, to do something that's never been done. I guess you should be rewarded for that.
yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's funny. You need food and you need good health to survive, but we say, oh, if you pay doctors less, no one will want to do it. But when it comes to preparing your food for you, well, they only deserve minimum wage, and they're pieces of shit if they just want to sit and get an unemployment instead of
unless you go to a 5-star restaurant.
But what's really the fucking difference?
Well, it's all food at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
But
it comes
people
out the
are
same
willing
hole.
to pay more for a lot. Like, and actually, that's a really interesting question. Like, why, when I can go to Fred Meyer and buy a $20 smartphone, I could buy a $20 big old, well, it's not name brand, but a slab smartphone. Why are people standing in line in the rain to buy an iPhone for over $1,000? Why? It does the same thing. That, I think, is actually a question worth pondering, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, definitely. value added is very subjective. I'll,
Well, I think
I'll
it
admit
comes
that, but
down to propaganda and advertising and okay, at some point we're gonna do an episode or a collaborative minute microscopy about how Apple is a cult.
yep.
They definitely are.
Yep.
But I would ask why. Like, how did Apple become a cult? Why do people think the way they do? And I think that will yield a lot of answers in a vast spectra of many other facets
Well,
of this conversation.
I guess in a way that's really just a form of crowdsourcing too. If you,
Yeah.
just kind of get down to the nuts and bolts,
Mm-hmm.
it's simply just what people want. And that's basically it, right?
Well, yeah,
Um,
yeah, because like you look at these videos, because I've gone onto crowdsourcing sites and crowdfunding sites and things like that, and watch videos of all kinds of crazy shit. We're gonna build this amazing thing, this thing that's never been done, or whatever. All you got to do is contribute a little bit, and people do. And because I think people believe in things, they want to believe in these things, and every once in a while something really awesome comes out of crowdfunding. um,
mm,
there's a lot of really good projects that came out of that.
Star Trek
I
continues.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I think that that is the way to solve like all the problems in the world, but I think it requires a I guess a prerequisite of understanding from people, like the critical thinking, the
Mm.
ability to look at something and know when you're being scammed. And I don't know that that's something that most people are taught, because people fund all kinds of bullshit things, and maybe that's okay. It's all right, it's only money, it's
Yeah.
a medium of exchange. Dollars don't matter. Like the Fed coin, it's just it's ethereal, it doesn't actually exist. um so you know what, if you want to work for 2100 hours and put all of that work into some kind of snorkel, the snorkel thing, like why not, because who knows, maybe it could happen. But if you look at it, it's pretty obvious that's bullshit. um and but the thing is, like, as a skeptic, like I don't know, like I'm pretty sure this is bullshit, but maybe it's not. Like, what if they're onto something? And why not test that out? And if somebody wants to dump all their money, think about it. People dump all their money into all kinds of stupid ass things all the time. Does your work have to have a utilitarian purpose at the end of the day? What if it's just like you just like Fortnite? Like,
Yeah.
is dumping all your money into Fortnite like a bad idea? Well, to me, it would be, but I can't judge somebody else for appreciating that and dumping everything they have into Fortnite loot crates or whatever. Um, why not? Like,
Yeah. And I mean, it's not to say that the way we do things is perfect by any means, because, like, being beholden to the board of directors on what gets done and what doesn't isn't necessarily the right way either, because I came up with a gene therapy hypothesis for correcting glaucoma, and got a provisional patent and everything. And then the board of directors said, well, it's not a small molecule, it's a gene therapy. That's not what we do. And they put the kibosh on it. And it's like,
well,
well, it could have helped people, like,
yeah.
maybe it didn't, but maybe it could have. You
Well,
didn't even try, you know.
and actually, no, that's a really good point. That the problem with that is that when you get into your bubble as a corporate executive, all you care about is the bottom line, and it's only natural that's going to be the product of
Yeah,
where
except
you
now
are.
that's their intellectual property, and it was my
Yeah,
idea.
and but then you have somebody who has some kind of novel, really interesting, and probably like game changing idea, and they're not willing to entertain it because they may have started out where you were, but where they are now, all they care about is the business operations side of things. And that's one of the, I guess, bad side effects of complex systems when you have businesses and things like that. The people who know what to do are not the ones making the decisions.
It's almost like a crowd squashing effort.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh man.
like
What?
like a lot of people saying, no, it's a dumb idea. You can't do that. Like,
Yeah,
and you
exactly.
can't take it elsewhere because it belongs to us, just in case it's a good idea.
Oh yeah,
Like
because yeah, because you were working for us when you came up with the idea. Now it's our property, but we don't
right.
want to. No, we don't want to entertain that.
Yeah,
I,
that's the dark side of patents right there. Like,
mm-hmm.
and
Well,
IP,
and
like,
that's one of the things. Like I believe all information should be free. Um, it's a
I mean, patents
dangerous.
do kind of help innovation,
Well,
but
in the short term, like I've had lengthy conversations with friends and coworkers and stuff about this. I think patents make sense in the short term. Um, Certainly, the ability to
during the
contain,
development phase, yeah.
yeah, contain something while you work on it, without fear of somebody stealing your idea and doing their own thing while you're developing it. That's
Yeah.
good. But there should be a sunset. And it should be very short,
Right. Yeah.
very short. But it
I
is
agree with
not. I
that.
mean, insulin, fucking A, insulin is still patented today. How?
Yeah.
Good God. Oh my
No,
God.
like a renewal of patent should never be granted once something is on the market. If
Well,
you're still
yeah.
developing it, sure. But once it's
Oh,
commercially available, you've had your chance to recoup your costs. If you haven't, that's the free market.
yeah.
You know?
And, the development phase should be really short to encourage people to actually develop it and not just put it on a shelf somewhere and forget about it.
Yeah.
Like it should, you should, the clock should be ticking. As soon as you apply for a patent, you should have like a very short time, like 5 years or whatever, to bring whatever it is to market. And if you can't, well, hey, it's public domain, and everybody else can work on that and improve on it. Because that's the whole point. Like, what are we doing this for? Is it
Yeah.
for profits, or is it humanitarian gains, or both? I would say kind of both. But then what's profit? Like, what is money? Um, Money doesn't even exist, as we've talked about.
We should do a whole episode on whether or not patents help or hinder the free market. But
Oh yeah. Oh man. Shit. We've only been talking about this for half an hour, and already there is some. There's a lot of angles there. This is really good.
I mean, yeah, like the free market in a sense was kind of born of crowdsourcing. I mean, that's at the core of it,
Yeah,
effectively.
I agree. Yeah, and
Yeah.
crowdsourcing is a free market sort of thing. Like you're not obliged to participate. Somebody tries to sell you. They try to uh get you to want to do it.
Mhm.
just like every other sales pitch.
Yeah, like Apple's
Mhm.
everyone wanted Wesley Crusher to play, but he wouldn't play it.
Exactly. Oh man, this is a great episode.
Mhm.
Maybe a little bit drunk episode, and that's okay.
Maybe.
I think some of our best stuff actually comes out of this. Honestly, yeah.
Well, yeah, because like when you remove the hindrances of I don't know, like social mores and
Yeah.
pressures and things like that. Yeah, you really allow your mind to flourish and blossom and other
Knock out
flowery
those
things.
inhibitions and things like that.
Yeah.
And actually be able to talk about things. Kind of surprised I'm as coherent as I am right now.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I think that just shows how awesome KSM actually is.
Yes.
This show is next level. Like, it's something else. Oh man.
And if you would like to crowdsource this show, we do have a Patreon page. Patreon.com/KSM vidcast, where we have a $50 a month subscriber, a patron. So that shows you people think we're fucking awesome.
Oh yeah. And if you don't want to just arbitrarily support us, you can support us by buying our music out there on the interwebs and iTunes and Spotify and such places. Yeah, listen to the music, buy the music. At some point, we're probably going to release a vinyl or two. So
I mean, that's actually a super fucking cool thing about this channel is we don't even just have discussion. We also have a unique song that often has some kind of tie to the topic, whether it's in an emotive sense or a lyrical sense, or like it ties
a titular
together.
sense.
Yeah, there's a multi-level experience with KSM. It's not just a video, it's not just a discussion, it's an experience. Are you experienced?
Oh man,
we're the Jimi Hendrix of YouTube. Like,
oh fuck. Are we gonna die because our
we're way past 27, so we're good, bro.
Okay, all right. Nice.
We're just egotistical at this point.
Oh yeah, I think that's probably a good point to end on.
Yeah.
I feel like we didn't really go far enough, but I think we've at least planted some seeds of thought, and that to me is good enough.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, hang out for the song that I just spent a few minutes like touting how awesome it is, and it will be awesome.
I sincerely hope so.
You might even hear it fading in right now. What's that sound?
Is there a song playing?
Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
You extend your hand into darkness. Keep us playing some